everybody. Welcome back to the Popcorn Square, episode 17. We're going to be doing bait and switch today, and I'm here, of course, this is Buttons, and I'm here with my co-host,
Neff. Kage.
All right, let's just jump right in. Today, our topic is going to be the movie Argylle. And, we bring up this whole bait and switch, and I thought this episode would be perfect with this release of Argylle to talk about how movies in general, the different previews and advertisements that we see, how we can be pulled in by this media circus and frenzy and all this positive reviews and press, and then we go and we sit down and watch a movie and we're like, wait a minute, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I am just completely thrown for a loop.
Yep.
And we see it time and again. Some movies are obviously a lot more noticeable than others. Now, personally, I'm just going to start off and say that for me, Argylle, I actually enjoyed this movie. However, I know that it's gotten some negative reviews and some bad press, and I do think that that does play heavily into that whole bait and switch. I think a lot of people went into this movie thinking that it was going to be this pure action movie, very kind of James Bond, spy mission, and I will say that it is a spy movie, but a lot of the jokes, a lot of the humor, and a lot of the camp, and trust me, there's plenty of camp in this movie, kind of leans a little bit more towards the style of the director and the ties to the Kingsman universe. And if you don't know that going in, which they really didn't play very heavily on that in the previews and the advertisements for this, and if you don't know that going in, you're going to be like, I don't understand why this movie is the way it is. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this off to Neff and let him give his thoughts on the movie.
Yeah, so with Argylle, interesting film. Like I said, from the trailer, as we've spoke on before, you see the trailer, you feel like you kind of get an idea of it. You think there's going to be a little edge to it. You see some things where you say, hey, I think there's going to be some humor in here. It might be a little funny, might be some quirky things going on. But once you actually watch the movie and you see it in its entirety, you start to see that, okay, they got us in there. They hook, line, and sinker, got us in there. They have Dua Lipa in there, a real famous singer, and you see that in trailers before, as Buttons brought up, how they'll use similar to like gimmicks to kind of get you more interested, get media talking about it. So-and-so's in here, so-and-so's in here. You see Henry Cavil, good actor. Dua Lipa, pop star. Samuel Jackson, legendary actor. Bryce Dallas Howard, I believe, pretty good actress, and in the new Jurassic Park series. So just based off that casting alone, you say, hey, this looks like it's going to be kind of interesting. Trailer looked decent, but as I went into the movie, I watched it, and, I want to say probably 15 to 20 minutes in, I start to see some cracks. I'm seeing some things that are a little goofy to me, and I'm just kind of like, okay, what direction are we going in with this? And as the movie progressed, you have scenes that kind of give you serious moments, but then they kind of gloss over the serious moments with cringy jokes. We don't need to have that with this. You guys need to, if it's going to be serious, let it be serious. You can have some humor in a serious film, but once it turns into, like, I guess, intellectual humor and then goofy humor, it's kind of like, where are we going with this? I thought there was decent elements in this movie. I thought there was elements, maybe it kind of, it reminded me of other films that I've seen, like spy movies, like Buttons was saying, and stuff like that. Like, I felt like there was some Bourne Identity in there, and like some James Bond, like Buttons said, and just little things that would, keep people interested, as well as the Kingsman elements as well. But like I said, I feel like there were some elements that were really good. But once you force too much humor on top of those elements, it just becomes this mess. And I thought the movie was too long as well. I think this movie is almost 2 hours and 15 minutes, 2 hours and 30 minutes.
2.5.
Yeah, it was a really strange film. I gave it, I think, like a 4.5 out of 10, which is a terrible score if I'm scoring a film. I got through it because I needed to get through it, but if anybody's like interested in Kingsman and they like that type of style of film and you like that type of direction, I think maybe you'll find it interesting. It might be worth a watch. It wouldn't be a movie that I would watch again personally. But like I said, there are some elements that I think you can take away from the film and say, that was decent, that was decent. But then there's a lot more negative things that come behind that really just cloud the whole aura of the film. And so that's just how I felt from a personal level. I'm looking at some numbers here. This movie cost $200 million. And we're going to talk about it more in detail.
And this was produced by Apple, right?
Right, right.
This was an Apple production,
Right.
and they went ahead and threw it into theaters.
Right.
And partly because it was such a huge budget, and I'm sure a lot of the budget, of course, as you mentioned, you look at the graphics, probably was a good portion
Right,
of that
some
budget, as
CG,
well
yeah.
as the names tied behind it.
Of course.
While you're looking up that information,
yeah.
Kage, let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so Argylle, I gave it a 4 out of 10 as well. Bait and switch, 100% accurate description for this episode for that movie. I went into it not knowing anything, so I'm speaking as a non-Kingsman fan.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen those movies. I've heard good things. And I went and saw this with an open mind. I went into it with an open mind. I even heard about some of the reviews beforehand, but I was curious, wanted to go see it. I liked the cast. I was kind of getting, don't shoot me here, but Ocean's 11 vibe. You ever seen those movies where it's like kind of a heist and there's comedy, but there's little bits of seriousness and there's some action? That's kind of how I thought this movie was going to go. I was like, okay, I know all of these actors, let's go. When I went and saw it, I was like, okay, what kind of thing? Oh, it's an author writing a book. I'm like, okay, it's a spy movie? Oh, no, she's writing spy. And you see how I'm talking, how I keep switching? That's exactly what the movie did. Mm-hmm. So one of my biggest issues with it was when you're seeing a moment that is dramatic, you don't really, as an audience member, you don't really get an opportunity to feel that moment because... So, disclaimer, spoiler alert, okay? Let it be known. There's a serious sad moment where a character finds out their parents are dead. And you're like, oh no, and then while you're processing this like the character is, all of a sudden they cut to a comedic moment. And I'm like, oh, am I not supposed to feel bad for that? Okay, we're moving on. And it was a lot of moments like that I think kind of messed with the pacing of the movie. You show a dramatic moment and it's ruined by inappropriate timing of comedy versus a comedic moment and all of a sudden they show something serious. So there was a lot of that. I didn't like the cheesiness and understand outside of this podcast, I'm not a dad, but guys, I like puns. I'm sorry, everybody. I like puns. And but this was too cringe even for me. The tie-dye dance sequence, I'm not really sure.
The smoke bombs.
And they kept showing hearts every 5 seconds. And I'm like, are you high? Like, who made this? Like, what kind of drugs do you need to be on to enjoy this? Because I'm sober, I'm clean, and I don't know what you're doing. What are you doing, director? What was that? And then what was it? Then there was a skating sequence.
The ice skating
I was
on
I was
oil?
okay. I was actually okay with that because at this point I had already been set up for the cheese. So I was like, okay, I might as well finish this ride out. Bring it, yeah. And I see the ice skating thing, and there's a part where the character comes around and she looks at the guy and he's like, wink, and it makes a ding sound, and I'm like, oh God, here we go. She sees the cat, even the cat winked at her, and it goes ding, and I'm like, okay, I'm checked out. And by the way, there's something I should have mentioned too, is during the tie-dye heart dance thing, 2 people got up and left. During the skate scene, 2 people more to my right got up and left. And about maybe 15 minutes before the movie ended, I saw 2 people up front get up and leave. That's 6 people that got up and left. I have not seen people get up and leave in a movie in a very, very long time.
All right, so to go ahead and switch pace here, did Neff,
I got some numbers for us.
Okay.
So I believe the budget for this film It was $200 million, not including, marketing. And then the box office, as it stands currently, and this movie came out on February 2nd, the box office is sitting at 80.1 million.
Okay, and I will go ahead and say this, just because Kage brought it up, which is simply that, I saw this movie first out of this group, and I actually did recommend it. Me and my boyfriend went and saw it that opening weekend, and no, we did not have anybody leave the audience from the theater. Nobody left, and honestly, we laughed through the entire movie. And so far, out of what I've seen recently, I personally loved it. But I like the camp. I have seen the Kingsman movies, and they were very campy as well. I mean, they had Elton John in one of them.
Yeah, we talked about this is the diner, right?
Exactly, doing like this full-on action fight scene, and all of the all of the fun parts of that movie did translate. So when originally, my bait and switch for this movie is simply the fact that when I sat down, I knew this movie was going to be a comedy. I did not think that it was going to be an overly serious. If you've seen Henry Cavill's haircut in the previews, you knew that he was not playing this super serious James Bond character. Like, you can't do it with that haircut. Like, it looked like something out of Street Fighter. Like honestly, it looked full on 80s, and it was goofy. And when you're watching the movie, yes, I will be 100% honest, it was super goofy. It was very campy. But I grew up watching and loving movies like Airplane and Monty Python, and, those are very physical and in your face, just like, even like the scary movies and things like that, where they're terrible. Like, you watch them and you're like, oh my gosh, it almost is like a big running pun. Like, the whole movie, Argylle, that's what it was to me. It felt like just a bunch of, somebody was sitting down. Wouldn't it be funny if we did this? Hey, how about for this smoke scene, there's colors, and, because they're reconnecting as a couple at this moment. Like, before that, there was a lot of tension between the two characters, and you're finally seeing them reconnect and realize that they used to know each other and be in a relationship. So that's what that smoke scene was, them finally getting back into their groove and saying like, hey, you know what? That's right. I did used to be this badass secret agent or whatever. And, and we were partners and we worked together, because in this movie, and, spoiler alert, as far as that goes, the main character, she is a writer, and she writes about Agent Argylle, right? And that's Henry Cavill's character. But Henry Cavill is not real, because he's a piece of fiction that she made up. But, each one of these characters that she has in her books that you see, like John Cena is one of the other characters in there that, again, famous guy that they cast in this role, but he is a very small part. And Henry Cavill, that's a bait switch right there. His character, they made it seem like he was going to be this huge character in the movie, and really he probably only got maybe 30 minutes of actual screen time in this movie, which, when we talk about bait and switch, and I'll say I've seen this a lot with Bruce Willis movies, especially, it makes more sense too after we learned about his diagnosis that was probably a good reason why, even though his name was out there on a lot of these projects, he didn't actually have a lot of screen time in those movies because of his illness, most likely. But, the studios and the producers and all that, when they're trying to market these movies, they want to throw the biggest name at your face to get butts in seats. So Henry Cavill being such a big name, that's what they're thinking is going to draw people into the movie theaters. So, but honestly, like I said, I loved it. And I will go ahead and say this, I will give it this, there's a lot of questionable CG that if you don't like that unrealistic look to things, you'll definitely get that with this movie. There are definitely a lot of parts that I feel like they could have done more practical effects, and even with the cat, because Kage brought up the cat. There was too much of that cat. The cat was not a pivotal character in this movie, and they made it a big character in this movie when they really didn't need to.
Right.
It didn't add to the movie. A cute couple little comic reliefs here and there, sure, but they made the cat too big.
Right, and
Yeah.
that makes so much sense. And like Buttons and Kage both said, you know, if you're familiar with Kingsman in that series, this movie might hit a little different for you. But if you're not, I would suggest anybody that hasn't seen it, if you do see it, maybe when it hits streaming or something like that, go in blank slate. Because if you go in with a blank slate, you can just judge it for what it is.
Yeah.
You're not going to have high expectations because you don't really know what's happening there. But like I said, you know, if you like Kingsman, this might be right up your alley personally.
Yeah, same director.
Yep, exactly. Same type of cinematic styling.
It makes me want to go back and check
Watch.
out the cause I want to see what it's based off, because I don't want to be unfair and say that, oh, this was a jumbled mess and it's made by the same
And as
director,
I said,
so it must be crap.
right?
No.
And as I said, I had seen bits and pieces of Kingsman too, and
Yeah.
I was just like, this just ain't for me.
Yeah.
Like,
And,
it's just
and
not.
that's fair, you know,
Right.
we're all gonna say that, you know,
Right.
we've talked about before how we each have different styles and, you know, that kind of comedy or, you know, types of movies that we enjoy more than others. So, I mean, like I said, it was a little disappointing to me to have had said like, oh yeah, we loved this movie, and, you know, you guys, Neff and Kage, obviously, they did not favor
Right.
this type of movie.
Right.
And to be fair, you know, I didn't want to give too much away when I was describing the movie.
Right.
But it might have been more useful if I had said, hey, this movie, pure comedy, it's, you know, it's a laugh. It's not a serious movie. Because to me, those Kingsman movies, that's kind of what they are as well. There's some serious moments to them, but they are not to be taken serious. If I had to describe like what Argylle is, comparing it to a couple of other movies, Get Smart, Mr. Magoo, you know, they're comedy and they're campy and they're cheesy. And Argylle to me is kind of like a combination of like Charlie's Angel meets Get Smart. So it's full on just, you know, not to be taken serious.
I would have liked something more along the lines of like Mr. and Miss Smith.
Yeah.
Whereas there's like adult humor, but it's not goofy. And there's like serious scenes, but I don't feel like anybody's gonna lose their life in some brutal way. You know what I mean? I think if it would have went like that, cool. But like we said, this is a Kingsman type style film, so it's gonna follow the Kingsman DNA. Kage?
Well, just to kind of talk about the seriousness for a second. One thing that I didn't mention before is there was like a big reveal every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think
A lot of plot twists.
yeah, like don't get me wrong, I'm okay for plot twists. I mean, if I can sit through an M. Night Shyamalan movie, I think, okay, I'm getting laughs over here. Yeah, like I'm okay with twists, but every 5 minutes, so you mean to tell me if I have to get up, God forbid, go to the restroom, come back, how many plot twists have I just missed? Her parents are not her parents. Okay. Oh, the parents are dead. Okay, and while I'm still processing, you're hitting me with another reveal. I'm like, stop it! I'm still processing the thing you showed me 10 minutes ago. Knock it off, because like all the cheese factor, I can forgive that. You're talking to a pun guy. I can forgive that to a point. But if you're gonna throw in seriousness in there, then make it make sense. Don't sit there and say, somebody died. Oh, by the way, we're gonna hit you with this comedy. Oh, we're not gonna process that. Okay, got it. We're
Then the
moving
cat's
on.
gonna
We're
blink
moving on. Then the cat's
3
gonna.
times.
But it's not just
Maniacally.
Listen, it's not just that the cat blinked, it was that they gave it a freaking sound effect. It goes ding, and I'm like, are you kidding
was
me?
winking,
And when the
yeah.
cat dinged, 2 people to my right got up and left, and I'm like, take me with you.
Yeah. What do you guys think about, we talked about the budget and the box office, but do you think most of that budget went to location shooting and CG work?
So, I mean, location for me, it didn't look like it was particularly heavy on
Right.
location. There might have been a couple of scenes where you're definitely like, okay, they had to go to a destination shoot, but the rest of it could have very
Well-grounded. Yeah.
very easily been shot on a sound stage or with
Maybe green screen, yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You
could
could
tell
see
there
that
was green
too. Maybe I
screen.
think when they were in England,
Well,
London,
that
looked like there's some
secret
green,
base, that secret base that was
some
like
green
a
screen
vineyard,
there.
wherever they definitely used some green screen there.
The boat,
yeah,
the
the
ship,
boat.
that looks CG.
Oh,
and then
the
of course,
ship was definitely
and then
not
there's
a
some
real
green
ship.
screen on the interior of the boat
Yes,
as well.
Car.
yes.
The car?
Oh, were you talking about when they're going?
Driving downhill,
Yeah.
driving down a village, an open villa of Tuscany or wherever
Yeah,
they were.
they were
Right.
definitely using
I
some
was like-
CG there. But
I
that's,
was like, I know they're not really doing that, but at the same time, like, how are they doing that?
Right.
yeah, it definitely, that one, that would be the only area that I think they might have shot at a destination, because they had, the scenes where they're like in front of streets and shops and stuff.
Right.
And that they probably had to be on location somewhere.
I think maybe when they were in France, when they met up with Samuel's character, they
Right.
probably could have been in
Oh.
California, honestly, because it was just
Okay.
a vineyard.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
that's
I mean, are you just gonna? there's no way that's in California. It's
Well,
a vineyard.
And there was some green screen use there as well.
Right.
So even if there was stuff in the background, that was probably
Correct.
where that green screen comes in.
So I feel like, budget-wise, I'm just gonna say it. You have an all-star cast. There's your budget. Samuel L. Jackson.
There was a
Henry
lot of
Cavill.
CG though.
I mean, those two alone are big. Especially Samuel L. Jackson with all the Marvel movies he's been in.
Right.
You know what I mean? We have like pretty much an all-star cast. Sorry, everybody. In my opinion, debatable on the Bryce Dallas Howard.
yeah.
Howard, she's not in, like, she was in Jurassic Park, but those movies are nothing compared to Marvel, at least before Endgame. That is, because Samuel L. Jackson has been, he's
Yeah,
set
his
for life.
resumes
He's
too,
set for
so,
life.
yeah.
So him alone in that is big. And Henry Cavill has been well established as Superman, DC. He dropped Witcher
Yeah.
on Netflix. For those that don't know, he dropped Witcher because he didn't agree, and respect to him. He didn't agree where Netflix was going going away from the story of Witcher, but he left Witcher. And it's like the Hollywood has been just ruthless against this guy. He's just not getting big roles, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And like he left Witcher, but now I see him on this, and I'm like, oh man, I
I
like
think
him
he's
in Witcher.
doing
I
his
like
own
him in
production
Superman.
work now too.
Well,
Yeah.
As we've discussed in other episodes, because Kage brings up a good point with Henry Cavill, I think we are starting to see a little bit of a trend with him as being labeled as difficult to work with. And, we've seen it with several actors and actresses that kind of put their foot down when it comes to the studio and say, no, this goes against what this character would have done. And Henry Cavill has been very vocal about all of his work, not just with Superman and Witcher, but he's basically said, look, if I'm going to play this character,
I want it to be true.
I want it to be true to what it is, like who this character is from the source material. He wants to keep the integrity of the role. And, again, what that does for you is Hollywood sits there and says, well, you're just difficult to work with. We can't be reliant on you. And, we've seen that with several other actors and actresses, but not for those same reasons. So I will say that I hope, as far as Henry Cavill is concerned, that he doesn't get the reputation of being difficult to work with and get shut out of those projects, because it's very different to say, hey, I want my character to have integrity versus somebody didn't get me my sushi and my tea was cold and now I'm going to throw a baby fit and go hide in my trailer. That's very difficult to work with.
Well,
Right.
it's just something I'll say off that too is I have seen stories of actors being difficult to work with. We talked about it a little bit in a previous episode of Wesley Snipes during Blade.
Right.
He did not want to come out of his trailer, and he wore glasses on set at all times, and they had to CG his eyes. That's a difficult actor.
Right.
In a way, I have respect for Cavill because, first off, this guy's a nerd. He actually plays games. He cares about his lore and everything. So, speaking to you as a gamer, I appreciate an actor who sticks up for the source material. We've talked about this in our adaptations episode. When you make a movie based upon a video game or a book, when you change anything against in that character, that story or whatever, the fans will eat you alive. And so he is fighting for it, because Hollywood's Hollywood. Hollywood will take liberties and they'll say, oh, well, we need to twist this, we need to change this story in order to make it more easily digestible to non-gamers, non-readers, okay? And the truth is, Hollywood needs to kind of be brave and trust the source material. We've said this in other episodes. Cavil, like with The Witcher, he's like, I know this character, I know these books, I know these games, and I know what Geralt of Rivia would and would not do, would and would not say. He knows that universe, and he was perfect for the role. Great actor. I can't speak on all of his movies, like in terms of being kind of a drama queen on set. Time will tell. Time will tell.
Seems to me the thing to do is you take hold of a series that has a like cult-like following, or maybe even a big mainstream following, and then you use that series to implement your propaganda.
Now,
That's what it seems like has been happening, right? Because they know people are going to watch it because it's popular. So like, oh, they're doing this is going to be awesome. And then, like Kage was saying, trust the source material. They don't want to trust the source material. It's about taking something that already has a stronghold on a group of people and then exploiting that, but then also twisting it in your way so that you can kind of hit them with propaganda underneath. Right. It's not about they don't care about the lore. You hear people working at Marvel saying that we didn't care. We didn't read the comics. We don't care about the comics. Mm-hmm. This is our Star Wars. It's like, no, it's not your Star Wars.
A great right? recent example would be Avatar.
Oh yeah.
So that has
nice.
it got like 7 out of 10. It's good. It's not great. Definitely better than the M. Night Shyamalan thing. Not that was a.
I've only watched
high
episode
bar.
1 of that. But,
So,
yeah.
from the people that I've spoken to who have watched it, they've said good things. Mm-hmm. I haven't watched it yet. I intend to, as a fan of the show. But one thing I did read about that they went off the rails on was the character Sokka. So in the show, he is like, he's not like this all the time, but every time they come across a female around his age in their adventures, he's like in love and stuff like that.
He's Brock. He's Brock from Pokemon.
No, that is 100% fantastic.
He's Brock from Pokemon.
Yes. Absolutely, he is Brock.
Wow.
And it has that comedic value just like Brock. But as the show goes on, Sokka and all the characters, even Aang, they all mature. And it makes you appreciate that end result because you see how childish, how innocent they are in the very beginning. And as the show goes on, by the time you're in the last episode, you're like, wow, these characters have grown up.
Yeah.
And by changing this dynamic in the character in the Netflix version, I don't know what else they've changed. If this is all they've changed, could I watch it? Could I say it's good? Yeah, I'll be open-minded. I'll see what they do. It's not like the point of watching it, so it's not going to detract me. It's not going to put me off of watch it. But that's just an recent example of adaptations changing. And the creators of Avatar walked out of the production. They left due to creative differences with Netflix. But again, time will tell what differences are coming.
Well, I was just going to say, to bring us back to a topic here, if, we have discussions again about Argylle. I know you guys didn't really care for it, but knowing what you know now about the movie in terms of ties to Kingsman, that it's not a serious movie. I mean, Kage, you brought up a point, there were things about the movie that definitely didn't make sense in terms of, being reality-based. And, kind of being extreme over the top in terms of, winking cats and things like that. But if we did see a sequel to this or even a prequel that goes back to before she has her accident that leads into this movie, if you knew, if they had done a trailer that made it like set, in your face, this is Kingsman universe, hey, and this is not a serious movie. This is more of a, just pure comedy kind of movie with some action in it. Would it be something that you guys, either one of you would be interested? Maybe not big screen. Maybe Apple would just take it to their streaming service simply because of how much money they lost on this movie. But is it something that you think that you would be interested in watching?
So I would maybe watch it if it was like you said, maybe Apple TV brings it out there and it's something they got there. Maybe there's a free trial along with it, and I'll just watch it. But I wouldn't pay money to go watch a prequel or a sequel. And they
Okay.
did have that spoiler as well, folks. They did have, I believe it was the end credit scene where
Yeah.
they
Yeah, where they
actually
tied it to
directly tied
Kingsman.
in with Kingsman. And it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting there. It's kind of like the light bulb moment. It's like, oh, okay, we get it now. It's
Yeah.
the Kingsman universe, right?
Right.
If you didn't know before, like I said, and I wasn't aware of that before, but once I saw that scene, of course, it was obvious at that point. But yeah, personally for me, like I said, I brought it up earlier, it's just not my style of film. But Kage, how do you feel?
Well, by the way, here's something I want to point out. Did you know that this was intended to be a trilogy?
Argylle.
Yes.
No, I did not.
Yeah, it was originally intended to be a trilogy based on how this does.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see that trilogy based on the numbers, because in the
Do you-
second week it
Well,
dropped.
do you think that they would just drop it to Apple then, like instead of putting it in theaters?
scale.
If they
I feel
wanted to
like-
go
yeah.
with the trilogy, maybe just keep it strictly Apple?
I would say I'm open to that idea to an extent. I wouldn't pick up a streaming service just for one show, especially some based on a movie that I was not big on. I'll admit that. But had the trailer been presented differently, I think I would have went into it with a different mindset. If I had that different mindset, maybe I would go into it like, oh, okay, this is funny. If you would have told me in the trailer from the people that brought you Kingsman or something connected to that, I was invested in that trailer. I saw the cast, I saw what they were going for. I'm like, okay, I see where you're doing with this. And if you would have made that connection, I would have actually went back and watched the Kingsman movies to kind of mentally prepare myself for what I'm walking into.
For that style.
Right. I went into this completely blind. I've never seen the Kingsman movies. I didn't know what I was walking into. I saw an all-star cast that I'm familiar with. It had action, it has comedy, and I kind of made my own assumption thinking, okay, it's going to be Ocean's 11, a little serious, a little comedy, some action sprinkled in, all-star cast. I'm in. I'm sold. So I went into it with a curiosity, but had they presented it differently, had they told me that I would have done my homework. I would have watched the other movies that would have made me more open, but we didn't get that. This is two little nuggets of info that I saw on Argylle was the second weekend it dropped by 63%.
Yeah, I think I added that
Yeah,
little
I-
information in some other
I
conversation.
saw
we had.
that. I saw that a few weeks ago. Is when I saw that information, and according to Variety, they said that this is 2024's first big bomb. And I think about that. I'm like, do we? 2024 has just started.
That's a bad loss, man.
That's a
$200 million budget and you only made
Yeah.
$80 million. Jeez. That sucks.
I will say this, and we talked about Henry Cavill being true to, source material and really enjoying comic books and stuff like that. So Kingsman obviously is a comic book, and I think that's probably why Henry Cavill tied his name to it, because it was probably a series that he's read and enjoyed. Now, that being said, I did mention that he is not a big part of this movie, but that's why, the information that Kage put forward makes a lot of sense, that they were going to spring this into a couple more
Makes a
movies,
lot
at
of
least one more, because, at the very end, this whole time you're working off the assumption that his character was made up by the author. And then at the very end, you're like, wait a minute, here he is in the audience. His character is real. Like, maybe not her character, but he exists in the real world. So when you watch the other Kingsman movies, if anybody's already seen them, you'll notice that certain characters pop in and out that are just wild off the wall characters. Like there's like this one guy who's like very cowboy, and you get just little glimpses of these characters sometimes, and sometimes they're a big part of the movie, so that those have to be pulled from somewhere else, and within that universe of Kingsman. So I think that the reason why they would have opened this up for more is because the first two Kingsman movies were well done and well received. Maybe the second one wasn't as well received, and I will say I liked the first one a lot better than the second one.
I think they both made money too.
Oh, I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did make money. And you had with those movies, the third one, which is like a prequel. I think it's called the King's Men.
I know what you're talking
or something
about.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's supposed to go back to I think the 1800s or something like that. So some of the lore of Kingsman kind of goes into play with that. But basically, that one I think is probably the one that was the lowest grossing out of the three that they've done within the Kingsman universe. I could be wrong, but I'm sure that Henry Cavill had every intention of being the star, or at least a much bigger role in the next movie, because you're held on to him, all the way up to that cut scene where you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Right.
And again, Kage mentions all the twists, all the fun that went into these. And yes, I will say there was a lot, but one of the other things that I mentioned this to Neff when we were talking about the movie, is I said, yes, when you're talking about comedy, when you're talking about magic, most of those people see themselves as successful if they can even fool you just once, to where you're like, I don't know how they did that. Magicians and comedians are sitting there going like, hey, if I made you laugh even just once, I did my job. So this movie, like I said, I laughed throughout pretty much the entire movie, even when they were doing the crazy things, even when it was
it was definitely funny. It was just like, okay, this is over the top. Well, this is like, what am I watching?
When you're talking to somebody who really enjoyed the over the top campy comedies like Get Smart, like Monty Python, like the different scary movies or Scary Movie, I should say.
Yeah, that series.
Yes, that series of just goofiness, right? Airplane. I love that movie. Spaceballs. I mean, Mel Brooks in general can take anything and just make it completely off the wall humor. And yeah, you have to be a fan of that to enjoy this movie, I think. I think you have to really go into it and say, okay, this is just anything that sticks. Boom, they're going to throw it at you. Anything goes. And you know what? I feel like I got my money's worth out of it. And so I would definitely say, don't go to this movie thinking it's going to be James Bond and serious, because it's not.
No way.
But I think we've pretty much hit all our things that we were going to discuss today as far as bait and switch. If you guys know of any movies where you sat down and you were like, hey, this is going to be this, and it completely did a 180 for you in the theaters, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to hear your examples. And if you watched Argylle, let us know what you guys thought. And we're going to go ahead and say goodbye and good luck to you all if you go see this movie. But this is Button signing off along with
Neff.
Kage.
All right.
Be safe.